Hi and welcome to Conversations with Robyn. On today's program we have Howard Martin from HeartMath. Howard is out here from the United States, and when I asked him earlier about how to introduce him, what was your tongue-in-cheek answer?
Well, first of all, let me say it's a pleasure to be with you here tonight, and I'm really glad to be back in Australia. It's actually one of my favorite places to come to. But in our pre-interview, I was just playing with you. You asked me, what my title was, and I said I was the president of the International Association of Good-Looking Short Guys.
Which took me totally by surprise. But I think you could go for a higher acclaim, couldn't you? I mean,
probably, yes.
It's a very good description about yourself, I think. I'm sure your wife would agree.
Let's hope so.
Seriously though, what is your title with HeartMath?
My title is Executive Vice President of HeartMath.
Okay, and just in a snapshot description of HeartMath, that's sort of in layman's terms, what is HeartMath?
Well, the HeartMath system is a system made up of techniques, of very interesting innovative concepts, and new technology, all designed to provide new levels of intelligence and empowerment for individuals and organizations.
Okay. Now, I know HeartMath has been going for 25?
Actually, officially 17 years, but the work that led up to HeartMath now goes back over 30 years.
Okay, because you got involved, well, with the pre-work with HeartMath when you were about 21, didn't you?
That's right. HeartMath was founded by a man named Doc Childrey, and Doc has been my friend for now over 35 years. We met both when we were young men back in the South in the United States, back in North Carolina.
Okay. I know a number of years back, science had discovered that the heart had its own brain. Is that correct?
Well, yes, the heart has a very complex nervous system. It's studied through the field of what's called neurocardiology. And it's a very complex nervous system that communicates with the big brain in the head. And it's made up of support cells and neurons and, lots of components that give it a very sophisticated, nervous system component in our body. What's interesting is that information travels up through the body, up into the brain. It goes through the lower centers of the brain, right through the emotional centers, and then terminates right here in our thinking centers in the neocortex. And what's interesting about it as well is that when you map out the neurological traffic in the body, it's easy to see that the heart actually is sending more information to the brain than it's receiving from the brain.
Receiving more than it's sending.
It's sending more to the brain than it's receiving.
It's sending more than it's receiving. Roughly when did they discover this?
Well, I think the earliest was in the 70s. The work of John and Beatrice Lacey and others were indicating that the heart had a sort of intelligence. In their studies, they found that the signals from the brain were supposed to produce a certain response in the heart, but that the heart didn't respond that way. It acted as if it had a mind of its own. This became intriguing to researchers, and they began to sort of map out how does the heart actually communicate with the brain and the rest of the body. And today they know that there's 4 definitive ways that the heart does in fact communicate with the brain and the rest of the body. Now, this research has been around a long time. I think one of HeartMath's contributions, we brought that research to the forefront. We did our own research. We found researchers around the world working in this field, and we were able to really popularize it, the understanding that the heart is more than a blood pump.
Okay. And how has this information and this research changed how we look at ourselves as human beings?
Well, I think, the brain gets credit for everything, and it's true that the brain is obviously a very important part of who we are. And we see images in the brain, we get thoughts in the brain, and, those things indicate that that's where all intelligence lies. But I think that the paradigm shift is that it's not the only source of intelligence we have. And for example, we know that brain function is critically dependent upon those signals coming from the heart. So the heart is a major contributor to what actually happens in the brain. Taken further, we've been doing research in recent years showing, that the heart actually responds to external events and perceptions faster than the brain does, before the brain actually does. So this leads us to understand that, all that's been said metaphorically, the thousands of years of references to the heart, may in fact be very true. That the heart is a source of wisdom, it's a source of courage, it's a source of our higher qualities, our higher values. It's linked to the emotions that have the most benefit for us, the ones that feel best to us. All of this is now being proven by science to be true.
Okay, so then let me ask you a question. What Having said that, what comes first, a thought or a feeling?
Well, it's interchangeable. I mean, thoughts actually do create feelings, but it works the other way as well. It's sort of like a closed-loop communication system taking place. But I can say this, that thoughts don't have much power without emotional support. It's emotions that really give thought their power. You can have a feeling of frustration, no big deal, but you add emotion to that frustration, you get anger. And it works the other way as well. Have a feeling of kindness, but add that emotion to it, that emotional energy, and it becomes compassion. So to me, emotion is everything. There's a river of emotion running under every thought we have. And depending upon that river of emotion, the state of that river, so to speak, that has a lot to do with how we think and the perceptions that we have, and the feelings, are a central part of that whole process.
Okay. And your position with HeartMath again?
Executive Vice President, and I'm also co-author of a book called The HeartMath Solution.
Okay, so we'll get onto the book in a moment. So what is it that you do then in HeartMath?
Well, I'm in charge of what's called strategic development, which has a lot to do with all the licensing of our intellectual property, setting up operations in different parts of the world as well as domestically in the United States. I also oversee all the marketing activities at HeartMath from an executive position, and I'm also in charge of all new product development. So I have multiple roles, keeps me pretty busy, keeps me off the street, and a lot to do there. But I think, in the expansion of HeartMath now, HeartMath started with one man's idea and a small group of people who believed in that idea. And today we're an international global company. And it's been quite a journey, quite an interesting process for me. This whole experience has been, nothing short of phenomenal.
Okay, well then let's get a bit into your personal journey as to how you met the doc, and then where that took you. From what you said to me, a fairly normal childhood, mum, dad, a sibling, went through college, and what was your great passion?
My great passion was music.
Yeah.
I started playing drums at a very early age. Actually, I started playing when I was 9 years old, but at age 7, I determined that's what I wanted to do, and I was beating up on the furniture, so my parents finally got me a drum. And so it started early as music was my passion. It was what I really wanted to do. It's what I thought I would always do.
So you started playing in bands, writing music. Can you tell a little bit about that 10-odd years of your life?
Yeah, well, I went to college and did what I had to do there to sort of fulfill the family obligations and to get an education, which everyone felt that you had to have back then. It was very important for your success, and I believe that could be true for many people today. But in college, I was actually playing with bands that were professionals. And as soon as I got out of college, I went immediately into a career as a professional musician. And it was during the 70s. It was a really interesting era in music. It was a golden era in many ways of music, the late 60s, early 70s. And I played in lots of different bands, had lots of experience, played everything from the smallest, worst-looking clubs you've ever seen in your life to major coliseums, and had just an unbelievable experience at creating and playing music for all those years. And it was something I look back on with great fond memories. I'm glad that I didn't only do that with my life, but I have no regrets about what I did. It's helped shape who I am today, and it was a phenomenal learning experience.
And what sort of music?
Mostly rock music. The early years I was into R&B, rhythm and blues. I was infatuated with that. I remember when I was about 15 years old, and my first concert was the Beach Boys, and I went to see the Beach Boys. I remember walking away going, that was okay, but it didn't really move me. And a friend of mine said, you need to come with me next week. This guy, James Brown's coming to town. And I went to a James Brown concert, and it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life. The energy, the whole vibe of it was just amazing. And then I walked out of there a changed person. And so rhythm and blues, R&B was my first love. And when I was in the early part of my career, I was playing with a lot of people who are icons now. I mean, on the show with these people like Jackie Wilson and Junior Walker and the All-Stars and all these people that, Arthur Conley, different ones. So here I was in the middle of this very rich, musical era of rhythm and blues. But then, I became interested in rock music, the advent of listening to a Jimi Hendrix record and realized something different's going on here. There's a revolution happening in music, and so I became interested in that and eventually transitioned into more of a rock music genre.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and find out how Howard transitioned from music into HeartMath. And it was, you know, and then that strange way music moves the soul and the heart, doesn't it?
Yes, it sure does.
And it's just interesting that you then went to HeartMath, which is also about that soul and heart aspect, just a slightly different level.
That's right. We'll be back.
We will indeed. Welcome back, and we're talking with Howard Martin from HeartMath. Now, Howard, before the break, we were talking about your music.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you discussed with me earlier today is that you were one of that small percentage of musicians that actually made a living out of music.
That's true.
Yeah?
And it was, you know, you make money in the music business, you never keep it. You know, you buy things with it, you buy clothes, you buy some cars, you buy some things like that. And it had its ups and downs, that's for sure. I can't say that I was wealthy because of it, but I actually did make a living for over 10 years doing it, and doing it pretty much the way I wanted to do it.
Okay. And then you were saying that at 31, having been in the music industry for around 10 years, and also having been working, studying, being mentored by Doc Childers, HeartMath founder for 10 years, you had a major life change. What brought that upon?
Well, you know, I have these thoughts. I mean, I was pursuing my own personal growth, my own interests, my own spiritual growth was a part of what I was also doing during that time period. And over time, I started sensing a conflict. You know, my values and my lifestyle were not in alignment at all. The music business was very stimulating. It was exciting. It was challenging. It wasn't all a bed of roses, but it was always interesting, at least. And I would have thoughts. My own inner dialogue would be questioning what I was doing with my life. And I started having feelings about how self-centered it really was, how all the attention was on me, you know, what was I really giving back? And I could rationalize, you know, that I was entertaining people, that I was doing something through the music and all that. And I'm not saying that I wasn't, but I knew there had to be something more, and I didn't want to face that. I mean, why would you want to walk away from the only life you know, and one that's not bad, and one you're seeing potential for good success in? But the inner dialogue became loud enough that I finally had to pay attention to it. And some business things led up to a decision point. There was a point in my musical career when I had to make some choices. And at that time, I finally went deep enough within myself, and Doc Childers helped me a lot through this process of really coming to a realization that I needed to get away from music, and I needed to see what else life could offer, and that there would be maybe a different road for me. But it was an unknown road. And there was no assurances about what I would do or where I would go or what I would do next. It was actually kind of scary.
Jumping into the void. Before we jump into that void, you also had been married in that time that you...
Well, right after the music business is when I got married the first time, to a woman who was much younger than me. And she was a wonderful person and all that, but it was just wasn't quite right. I mean, there was an age difference and an interest level difference. And when I got out of the music business, I got really serious about my own personal growth. That became the focal point of everything for me. And it was really, to me, putting first things first, you know, making that the priority in life. The career, whatever about the career, I'd find a way to make a living. But you know, I didn't get out of the music business to pursue some other career. I got out of the music business so I could really find out more about who I really was. Yeah,
and there was a time that you were unemployed and getting a bit skint on money?
Absolutely. You know, when you get out, you know, the worst thing that can happen to a musician is having to go out and get a job. You know, it's like, you know, you never want to have to do that, and so you put it off as long as you can. But when they finally start, you know, when you finally can't make the payments on the Porsche, and when you know you're running out of money, and you have to sort of look yourself in the eye and say, well, what are you going to do about this? You know, you're not going to go back in the music business. You're going to have to do something else. But what? You know.
And so over the next 10 years, I think you were saying you had something like about 3 or 4 different jobs?
I sure did.
Can you just briefly just say what each of the titles were? Because that sort of gave you the background to prepare you for what you do now in HeartMath,
Yes, some of it did. I mean, the first job I had was working at minimum wage in a health food store in a mall. And you talk about terrifying. I mean, when I went into that mall that first day to start my job, you know, I had this little clip-on string tie on and everything, and you know, and the manager came to me and he said, "Here's your job today. You have to stand in front of the store with this little bucket of sunflower seeds and this little pink spoon. And when people come through the mall, you need to say, 'Hi, would you like to try our zesty sunflower seeds?'" And I started having these thoughts like, "Oh my God, you know, this is way worse than I ever thought it would be." You know, 2 weeks ago, I'm up on the stage. There's lights, there's smoke, there's excitement, and now I'm standing in front of this health food store with this little bucket of seeds and a pink spoon. And I remember having sweat just pouring down my face. It was worse than any stage fright I'd ever had. And I had these thoughts like, I was listening to my heart when I made this decision, but I'm not sure I'll ever listen to it again if it's going to be like this. It was a big shock. It was such a drastic change, but it took out big chunks of my own vanity, my own ego. I mean, I had to finally surrender to that whole thing over time and just get on into what I needed to do next.
And you became manager of that health food store in the end?
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a couple of other positions, were management positions or account executive positions?
I went in the insurance business, and then I became a manager and a top producer in the insurance company, and then I left that and I went to work for a brokerage firm, E.F. Hutton, and did well there. And then I realized that at E.F. Hutton that the only thing that anybody ever talked about was money. Mm-hmm. That was the only thing, the only conversation you ever had with any of your coworkers was all about money. And I felt like, what if you traded the music business for? You were pursuing something that you felt was more meaningful than that, and now it's all about the money. And it didn't make sense to me, so I left that, and I went to work for some friends who had a company doing something I felt was worthwhile. They were raising money for volunteer emergency service organizations, the rescue squads and the fire departments, that took care of people. And so I went in the position there of raising money for those type of organizations.
Okay, and you were about 6 years with them? Is that the one?
Yeah, 6 years with them. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what led to you to finish that one and you moved into HeartMath? Well,
Doc Childry and myself and a group of other friends had stayed really close and really tight for a long, long time. And we were really in a self-exploration process, really going deeper than ourselves, really trying to understand what can make us better people. What were the correlates of human performance? How did you really improve all that? How did you improve your awareness? How did you improve your care for others? All these things. And we worked hard on that. And that's what I was really about. The career, whatever. I mean, I worked somewhere, but all my other time was spent in that kind of an endeavor. And we didn't write anything down. We didn't call it anything. We didn't promote anything. We were in eastern North Carolina, which is a very rural area of the United States. There was no other people around doing this sort of work. But yet we attracted people. And Doc...
Why do you think you did?
I don't really know how to exactly explain it. I would just say that, with Doc Childry, he's always been a man who puts that first before everything else. Never about the ambition, never about, that sort of thing. It's always about, you do the inner work and the rest will come, And we were doing some pretty serious inner work. And we meet people here and there, and they tell somebody else, and the next thing you know, there'd be people around. And we met different people around the country and some people in California that we really resonated with, and they really liked what we were doing. They had another company of a different kind, a nutritional supplement business, and they became very interested in what Doc was saying and what we were manifesting from all that. And so after a long dialogue of 2 or 3 years, and Doc stepping back and assessing timing on everything, he decided it was time to form an organization to disseminate information about what we had learned. 15 years of this inner work with no externalization, we felt like we finally had something maybe worth sharing. It wasn't like we finally got an idea and we ran out to share it. It was very, to some degree seasoned and matured, at least conceptually, before we ever bothered to try to share it with anyone. So we formed a nonprofit and based it in California near San Francisco called the Institute of HeartMath. And the purpose of the Institute was to develop a system of simple tools and techniques that anybody could use to improve their lives. Not just the intelligent, not just the spiritual, but ordinary people. So they could benefit. Doc a long time ago said by the turn of the century, you're going to see tremendous stress levels in the world. And people are going to need something. They're going to need something they can use in their own lives to, to be able to handle that and to find their own self-security.
What year was he saying that?
He was saying that when I first met him back in the 1971.
Okay, so he was like 29 years down the track. He was saying.
He was thinking about all that way in advance, and basically because of his care for people. And so the Institute was set up to begin to structure that system. How would we share that? And just as importantly, to do scientific research. So we brought in scientists. We developed a very prestigious scientific advisory board, and we put researchers on our staff, and we began to research heart-brain communication. How does the heart communicate with the brain and the rest of the body? What does that mean? What does that do? And then taking that further, what are the effects of positive emotional states on performance and health? We've seen a lot of research on the negative emotions, anger kills, and all this type of research has been well documented. But we found very little literature on the effect of positive emotions. What's the physiological benefit of care? or appreciation or love. You know, how does that impact somebody's ability to perform in the game of life? We began to do that kind of research. And then we started developing techniques. We took and we study those techniques from a research perspective. So we had this solid empirical underpinning to everything that we did. Then we started writing books and then formulating training programs. The first training programs were for educators to help school teachers with, you know, their stresses and with their performance. Then we took that into corporate training and into personal development seminars. And the corporate training was in we were able to work that in over time through doing case studies with them, showing the effectiveness of our training, showing them bottom line return on investment driven results, and expanded upon that, and we were training in Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies. This all kept growing and growing and growing, and the media kept reporting on us. Very positive stories on national TV and major print publications. And it just kept growing. And more and more people were attracted to us, and our staff grew and our expertise grew. We got better at what we did, and we started sharing it with more and more people.
And the research kept
following it, kept going and kept supporting it, so that we could go into mainstream organizations with a message about the heart. But it was a new message. It was a message about the heart, but it wasn't just confined to philosophy and spirituality. It was about the power of the heart to really improve the quality of life and to improve the quality of performance in whatever we do, whether it's business or sports or raising our families.
In everyday life.
Everyday life.
We need to take another break, and we'll come back and hear more about Howard's journey. Welcome back, and we're talking with Howard Martin from HeartMath. And before that last break, Howard, you were talking a little bit about the journey of HeartMath and the research it's based on. And for those viewers that have been staying with us over the past few weeks, they would have seen the program we did with Greg Braden.
Yeah, sure.
Who is a great advocate of HeartMath.
That's great. Good to know.
And you were saying when I was talking with you earlier today that you have a number of people who are internationally working out there as spiritual leaders, transformational teachers, and yet they have found their way to HeartMath. Why is that? And also, you were also saying international sports people?
Yeah, leaders in a variety of fields. You know, HeartMath is an interesting organization that we've got a viable, proven system. It's helping a lot of people, and we're very neutral in a sense. I mean, we can appeal to lots of different kinds of people, because when you apply heart, it adds value to about anything, and so it's found its way into a lot of different places and a lot of different people. I think we've been. We try to be caring to people. We've done our homework on our research, so we have a solid bottom line to us. There's a neutrality factor that I mentioned, and because of that, we have attracted a lot of people to HeartMath. And I think that everyone has a lot of stress in their lives today, whether they're rich or they're poor, whether they're unknown or whether they're famous. And we've got something that can help, and I think that because of that, a lot of people are attracted to us.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier the book that you and Doc wrote. What's the name of that book?
It's called The HeartMath Solution.
And what's it about?
It's pretty much an overview of HeartMath, the whole entire system for the first 10 years at least. And it discusses the science, gives a good breakdown on that. It's got practical tools and techniques that people can practice that are in the book. It's got 3 chapters all about emotion, you know, and the power of emotion and how to regulate and better manage emotions for our own benefit. I think it's a very useful book, and it's a very informative book.
Okay, could you then share a little bit with us about that area of the power of emotion?
Well, it's real important. It's one of my main messages today, you know, and I've said this many times publicly, and I'll say it here in Australia, you know. I believe that learning how to better regulate our emotions represents the next frontier in human evolution. So we have this great gift. We have this power of emotion. We can feel more than any living thing on this planet. And yet emotion becomes this problem for us. You know, it takes us up, it takes us down. Emotions burn us. Don't show your emotions. Don't feel your emotions. All these things that are said about emotion. And I think that we're missing the great gift here. You know, it's a capacity that we have that adds enrichment to our life. It adds texture to our lives. Life without feeling would be a very uninspiring life. Just a pure objective life with no emotional component to it would not be much of a life at all. And so it's a great gift, but yet it's an underutilized gift. And it's a misused gift in many ways. And I don't see how we can really advance the intelligence of the human species until we pay more attention to understanding our emotions and utilizing our emotions. And it can be a fun adventure. It's not a scary thing. It's not bad to look at our emotions. It's important to see what we're feeling. Because every moment of every waking day we are feeling. And we're feeling something. And many people think of emotions as simply reactions that they have very little control over. I, on the other hand, feel like they're choices, that we can choose the emotions we want to feel. Mm-hmm. And what would higher consciousness be if it wasn't things like being able to feel like we want to feel when we want to feel it? What a great gift to be able to change our emotional state in the moment, to shift those emotions and feel the way we want to feel. And in fact, we can do that. That's the good news.
You're getting really excited.
Yeah, it's the good news though. We have the capacity to do this, and part of what HeartMath teaches is how do we do this. It's part where the techniques are really all about. But people want more fulfillment and enrichment in their life, and I don't believe it's possible to have that unless people take on a new level of emotional maturity and self-regulation, and just bring in that maturity and their own dignity and apply it towards, really looking at their emotions and choosing emotions that are most beneficial to them.
Okay, well, you use the word, is it coherent?
Coherence, yeah.
How do you use that, and what does it mean as far as HeartMath goes?
Well, part of our research is understanding this heart-brain communication, and what we found is when the heart and brain are in optimal communication, the nervous system is synchronized, all the body systems are synchronizing to that, and the hormonal regulation is outputting hormones in the body that are regenerative for us, and all the other systems are synchronizing to the heart as the master controller. We enter a state called coherence. I mean, the scientific term is psychophysiological coherence. Mm-hmm. It's a state accompanied by clarity of thought and feelings of positive emotions. It's very clear, it's very dynamic, it's very active. It's peaceful and calm, but it's also, again, very aware. It's not a sleepy type of a feeling. It's an energized feeling, but a balanced and centered feeling. And all of our training programs really are designed to teach people how to increase the coherence levels. And it's the research led to the development of new technology that measures coherence. And it's products that we have today, like the M-Wave personal stress reliever and the M-Wave PC, which is a PC-based product, that are really cool technologies that train people to increase their coherence. And this is very useful. I mean, coherence eats stress for breakfast. When you're coherent, you're not in a stress state. So it's designed for stress reduction. It's designed to improve performance. It's great to use with children. It's great to use to reduce things like test-taking anxiety. All these technologies are there to help people. So we've taken and built a really interesting bridge between technology and personal development. And the products have been really successful for us and helping a lot of people all around the world. And we'll be developing more new things as we go, utilizing technology as an aid. It doesn't take away from the need for self-empowerment. To use the technology to be successful, you have to do something. It doesn't do something to you, but it trains you how to do something for yourself.
Okay. Now, with all the years that you've been involved, prior to HeartMath, coming into being, and of course your work now since you've been with HeartMath, do you think people generally are becoming more open with their emotions in a positive way? Do you think we're actually shutting down more? Where do you think we're at generally as a species on this planet?
I think more people are recognizing, the need to be maturely looking at their emotional state. A lot of people still remain in denial about that or shut off from that. And I think people are definitely, many millions and millions of people are shut off from the feelings of the heart. And you see that clearly reflected. I mean, there was an article that came out just today on the CNN website saying that, the #1 prescribed drug category of drugs in the United States right now is antidepressants. 118 million prescriptions for antidepressants last year. What that means is people are shut off from the feelings of the heart. But they can easily reconnect with those feelings because it's not like the heart ever goes away. We go away from it. And it's always there. It's our own best friend. It's our own reliable source of self-security, and it's always there for us. But through the roar of ambition and survival, we start living from the neck up. Yeah. And we lose connection to it, and then we experience things like depression and anxiety and a host of other psychological conditions that are just not fulfilling. They're less than optimal. But to answer your question, I think we're also seeing a big shift in awareness in the world today. You know, I see the time we're living in as being a very interesting time. On one hand, we have extreme chaos, and the world's teetering on the edge, you know. And while that's happening, we also see this major increase in intelligence, awareness, consciousness. So it's two things happening simultaneously. And I'm very hopeful about our future. I think that we are, you know, we're evolving in a way, developing new intelligence needed to solve problems. I think we're going to go through a lot more rough spots before we get there. But ultimately, I think that the era that we're in is a very progressive era and an era that offers great hope.
Okay. Along that note, we'll go to another break. When we come back, I'd actually like to have you address that time-old question of whether women are more open emotionally than men or not.
Sure.
Back with you. Welcome back, and we're in the last part of our interview with Howard Martin. Howard, in the last segment, we're talking about, what was it, 118 million prescriptions last year for depression?
Antidepressant drugs in the United States, yeah.
Yeah. How would HeartMath address that?
Well, I think first of all we have to understand that, you know, people need to use their doctors, you know, and I don't say that just to be legally correct. I think that you should get your doctor's opinion on many things. And there are many different levels and forms of, say, depression. And some people with clinical depression, they need to be in medical care, you know, and they need to, you know, to maybe use those drugs. I'm not saying it's wrong for some people to take those. In an interview one time, a guy told me, you know, I was on air on a radio show, he said, these things helped me get back to where I could even do something like HeartMath. You know, I needed it to get there before I could even go further with something. But we have over 10,000 health professionals who use HeartMath, and many of those, if not most of those, are mental health professionals. Mm-hmm. And they've had amazing results at treating people with depression. And one of the areas that's being used today, as well as the M-Wave technology, is with you know, mental health professionals that deal with the returning troops from Iraq. And they're seeing great results with these people. And they're coming back traumatized by what they've experienced. So HeartMath can certainly help. I'm not saying it's the only thing people should do, the only treatment they should have for that kind of a disorder. But we've had just too many positive results to ignore it either. That, you know, psychologists today, many of them are looking for shorter interventions, not to have to go through the entire, you know, cognitive behavioral processes and rediscoveries and all that. They're looking for ways for acknowledgement to occur about emotions, but then something to shift those. And within the context of that, HeartMath's proven to be very effective. It doesn't skip over things, but it certainly can accelerate the process. Okay.
Well, we're talking earlier about the power of emotion. Mm-hmm. Would it be fair to say that for a lot of people, there's not the acceptance that, you know, sometimes we can feel depression. You know, it's part and parcel of our journey sometimes, surely. And it's almost too easy to go to a doctor, say, I'm not feeling great, and perhaps be told you need to be medicated, rather than get more exercise, take more rest, eat healthier food. Would that be true?
I think so. I think, you know, sometimes prescriptions are the easy way for things to get dealt with. People want to take a pill, they want a quick fix. I'm not saying that's true in all cases, you know. I also want to make the point that I'm not saying that those emotions are always bad. You know, I think that all emotions are there for a reason. They all provide some quality to our life. And the way I look at emotions is almost like the colors on the palette of a painter's painting a picture, and the painter is choosing what colors to use. So it becomes choice of color. We also have choice of emotion. It's not bad or wrong to feel sadness, or anxiety, or any of those things. And at the same time, if we only paint pictures of life from those emotions, we get a pretty grim picture. So we can learn to choose our emotions. We don't always have to feel those. For me, I can feel those kind of things. I can feel sadness. I can feel anxiety. I can feel, you know, disappointment. All that's real for me. But what's more important is what I do with those emotions. Do I allow them to stay there? Do I continually mull over those things and just let them circulate through my system? Or do I fully acknowledge that I'm experiencing that? Mm-hmm. Then I take power that I have within myself and I make a conscious choice to shift to something else. And why would I do that? It's because some emotions are actually more beneficial for us than others. Some add quality to our life, some don't. It's just math, psychological math.
Yeah, well, also some of them are a wake-up call, aren't they? I mean, if you're starting to feel depression, there's something out of balance in one's life.
Certainly.
Surely.
Stress in general is a signal that something's out of phase and out of balance, and you need to take action, you know. And so all that can be true. And I think that there are many ways that people can improve their emotional health. It doesn't always have to be a prescription drug. Maybe that's, as I said earlier, maybe that's important for some people. I'm not ruling that out as a viable treatment, but you know, I'm not jumping to it that quickly either. It just depends upon each case and each person, and that's where we have to have some trust in our health professionals to help those people make the right choices.
Okay, heart disease.
Well, heart disease is, you know, pretty interesting. I mean, the main benefit we've seen for years with heart disease is improvement of arrhythmias. Arrhythmia is the irregular beating of the heart, you know, uncontrollable beating. It's, you know, a jittery heart, so to speak. And we've had many documented cases of people being able to reduce and even get off their, you know, their medications by using HeartMath. And you know, these are real stories where people have gone on national TV telling these stories. There's another famous American author named Joseph Chilton Pierce, you know, that wrote The Magical Child and Cracking the Cosmic Egg and those kind of things. And he openly says, and has said it in print, that HeartMath saved my life. He suffered from severe tachycardia, which is, you know, a severe form of arrhythmia. Through the utilization of practicing HeartMath techniques, he was able to cure himself of that. So it's not miraculous, but at the same time, we've just had lots and lots of very positive stories of people who are seeing health improvement from practicing the HeartMath system. And that's very hopeful and very exciting.
Okay. What would you say, and I'm just going to pick a random number here, what would you say are maybe the 3 most important things in our life, or things to do in our life to attain that happiness, that balance of emotions?
Well, first of all, you know, to learn how to utilize the emotions, as I said earlier, to put some attention to that, to make sure that, you know, we put a lot on our mental development. We pay a lot of attention to our health like we didn't used to before, about what we eat and how we exercise, all that. Do the same thing with your emotions, you know. That would be important. I think making sure that we are putting out enough love and care for others. It's not just about us. And if you want to advance your personal growth, as I said earlier, then, you know, make it something where you're giving, not just taking, you know, from that. And then lastly, learn to respect the heart as more than a blood pump, as a source of intelligence within the human system, an essential intelligence. It's high speed, it's intuitive, it provides security, it provides understanding, and it provides the type of emotions that are the most rewarding to us, and the ones that are most rewarding to those that are around us. So put the heart first, use it to work on the emotions, and make sure you're giving. And those 3 things will advance you really quickly.
Okay, well, do you believe there's a universal heart? You know, for example, Greg Braden talks about the divine matrix. Bruce Lipton talks about the connection between science and spirituality. Do you think there's a heart-type energy that we all connect into, that oneness aspect?
I believe that the heart is the core of the universe, in a sense. You know, that we do tap into the universal heart. We also have this thing called spirit, or higher self, or higher consciousness, and you know, people use different names for that, and it's something larger than ourselves, but it's still really us, in a sense. And I believe that the entry point within the human system is happening at the level of the heart. It's through the heart, which transmits it at super high speed throughout the brain and the rest of the body where we experience it. But the entry point of spirit in the human system is the heart. What makes the heart start beating when we have just a fetus? Nobody knows. It's still a mystery to science. The spirit integration with the physical body at the heart level marks the beginning of life. When the heart stops, the spirit withdraws. It marks the end of life. So the heart is the entry point for that spirit into our human system. And that's where we're really accessing this intelligent bandwidth that goes beyond just the logical linear mind intelligence, but it's something that is more intuitive, that is more expansive, that gives us the ability to see the big picture and then use that intelligence to make decisions big and small that add quality to our lives.
Okay. Well, you mentioned about, you know, when the breath leaves the body. Do you believe there is an afterlife, or there's a reconnection to a higher divine? You know, what's your take on that?
My take on it is, yeah, life goes on. You know, we make a big deal out of death, and we fear death. We get very attached to what we have in life, and I can experience those feelings too because I love life so much. But to me, it's a simple walk through to something else. It's not as big a deal as we make it. And yeah, it goes on and on and on. You know, life that we experience today is just one chapter in a book or one frame in a movie of something much larger.
What would be 1 or 2 of the most asked questions from people when you've been out there travelling and presenting? And and doing your trainings?
How did you get so good looking in only 57 years? back to the beginning.
It just goes, and you're the president of what, sorry?
No. I don't know. I mean, I get different questions about different things. Nothing's coming to mind this is a pattern. You know, what I find people really want to know from me is, you know, they're suffering in life. They really want help. They want to know from me that what I say is real, and that if they'll practice the things that we share in the HeartMath system, that they can see benefit in their life. And my answer to them is, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. But it's all about how much you apply, how much you really want it, how much you go for it within yourself. But that, you know, it's like this. We're all born with a present. It's our fulfillment. And the job of life can be looked at as unwrapping that present, taking off the paper, taking off the bow, pulling the present out of the box. Most people never get past the bow, you know. And so within us there's huge potential, great potential, and a chance for greatness in all people. And bringing that greatness out is an inside-out job. It's something people have to do themselves. It's a self-empowered process. And that's the era we're in now. It's not the era of gurus. It's not the era of external things doing it for us. It's the era of us doing it for ourselves. And people can do that. And HeartMath's just a helper, a friendly facilitator of that. You know, we add power, the power of the heart to anything. It increases the potency of whatever we're doing. So I'm all for and believing in the fact that people can achieve new levels of greatness and new levels of fulfillment beyond their wildest imagination. And I don't want to see people walk around with an unopened package. And that's, to me, very important, because, you know, life can be a wonderful experience, and we all have challenges, but we can learn to meet those challenges with a new level of resiliency, a new level of power, and a new level of confidence. And when we do that, you know, there's no way that life can't get better.
They're quite words that one could quite dwell on for some moment, aren't they? We're finished the program. As we do, can I ask you to just look into the camera and just one last sentence to the viewers? It can be a comical one as well.
No, I get sincere. You know, there's a, you know, the greatest gift, as I mentioned earlier, is my love for people. And so I hope that you can feel that, even though you're not with me right now and we may never meet. But just know that there are people out there that care about you, and people that love the people of the world, and we're doing what we can to make this a better place for all of us to live. And so no matter what comes your way, never lose your heart and never lose your hope, because within you have a great power, and all you have to do is sort of dust it off and access it and going down the street with a smile on your face. So with that said, I'd like to say thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us tonight in your own way. And I hope that I said some things tonight that have inspired you and given you some hope about what you can do with yourself.
Howard, thank you so very much. They're beautiful words. You know, Greg Braden had me in tears at the end of the program. You're getting me more today. Thank you so much. Could you please say what your website is?
HeartMath, HeartMath.com.
Okay. Thank you so much for being on the program.
It's been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And invite you back.
All right.
Next time you're out.
Good.